the state of Illinois, right? Where we're just getting through the month of January. So we're so glad that you could join us this afternoon. And welcome to our fourth session in the Administrator Forum series for the 2025. And now we're in the 2026 part of the school year. These sessions are a collaboration between the Early Childhood Development Department at the Illinois State Board of Education and Early Childhood Professional Learning, also known as ECPL, a project of the Center Resources for Teaching and Learning. I'm Cindy Berry, and I'm with ECPL. We will be sending out information about future sessions through email. So we will also be posting information about these sessions on our ECPL website. There is a special section on our website called the Workbench for Administrators. We encourage you to go to that site because that page has information about upcoming professional learning and resources specific to your role as a leader. A few housekeeping items before we get started. Please be sure that your name in the participant list is the same first and last name you use to register for this session. We need this for attendance purposes. If necessary, please edit your name to ensure we are able to confirm your attendance. Today's session will be recorded, and the recording will be posted on the ECPL YouTube channel within the upcoming week. Due to the large number of participants for this session, your microphones will be muted throughout the session. However, the chat will remain open for your comments and questions, and there will be opportunities for you to ask those questions at certain breaks within the session. We ask that you remain in the session to hear important announcements at the end. And now it's my pleasure to introduce you to our principal consultant. Hi, Jenny. our consultant, Jenny Metcalf, at the Early Childhood Development Department at the Illinois State Board of Education.
Thanks, Cindy. Hi, everybody. Good to see you back again in the new year. Before we get started in today's session, I just wanted to talk again about our administrator conference that is happening April 13th and 14th in Champaign. The registration is live. Hopefully, you've gotten numerous emails about it from ECPL and from ISB. We really encourage every program to send at least one administrator to the conference. Again, April 13th is the reception. April 14th is the actual conference. And then PI, if you have a PI grant, will start right following 14th, the reception, 15th, the PI conference, all in the same hotel this year in Champaign. So please, we encourage you to attend. So today, our topic today is about early literacy, and specifically, we're going to talk about the Illinois Comprehensive Literacy Plan. You all know already, I think, Dr. Antoinette Taylor. She's been with us before. She wears tons of hats, and most specifically, she supports PFA and PFAE programs. And she also is joined today by Kim Johnson, who is from our Standards and Instruction Department at ISB. So you're in good hands here to learn about our literacy plan.
Hey, thank you, Cindy, and thank you, Jenny. We, as it says, strengthening literacy success with the Illinois Comprehensive Literacy Plan. I am so excited today to be here, as Cindy said, it is January 21st, but I am still telling people Happy New Year. So if I have not seen you yet, Happy New Year. And as it's already been stated, if you've been under a rock somewhere and are not aware that there is this new wonderful agency in our state, you'll see it there. This is the Illinois Department of Early Childhood, the new state agency that's gearing itself up for, as they keep saying, a countdown to take place on July 1, 2026, in collaboration with ECPL and the State Board of Education. My wonderful co-presenter today, who, God bless her, I've been hounding, I'm always in her inbox. Hey, Kim, I got some more thoughts about the literacy plan since 2024 when it first came out. I'm going to just pause and let her say a little bit about herself before I jump back in. But Kimberly, you want to share anything real quick?
Yeah, I'm Kim Johnson. I'm the English Language Arts Principal Consultant in the Standards and Instruction Department at ISB. And I lovingly refer to the Illinois Comprehensive Literacy Plan as a child, like a toddler now that I used to co-parent with my director, Kirsten Parr, but now that she's our director, she has kind of given me a lot of the reins there. really excited. It's an area that I'm passionate about. Really excited to be able to share more about this and join this meeting again. So thank you.
And this is a little bit of information about myself. There is so much going on in our country, in our state, in our world today. As Jenny said, whatever hat I'm wearing, I'm always hyper focused on the early childhood community because that is the seed that we plant that hits everything K up. If you're talking about college and career success, where does it start? Early childhood. That perfect and important pre-K transition, where does it start? Early childhood. So this is just a little bit of information about myself. This is our contact information. The best way, especially if you are on here and you are the person in your district that maybe you're the pre-K to third grade district administrator. Questions that you have about the literacy plan itself, the best way to reach Kim is through that standards@isb.net. Of course, if you have any questions for me or the content about, this or you, first of all, you can always reach ECPL, but if you have any specific questions, this is the best way to reach me, and you will see this information again. Just telling you a little bit about how our day is going to go right now. It really is very high level, and you'll see why in a little bit. And you'll also see that we've highlighted this successful transition to kindergarten. If you are PFA or PFAE, you know one of the compliance checklist measures is having a transition plan in place for children as they age out. We love those little darlings, but when they turn 5, it is time for them, to start moving on towards kindergarten. And we want them to literally move from preschool for all, PFAE, Head Start, wherever they may be, right into kindergarten. And because this comprehensive literacy plan literally spans the spectrum of early childhood through grade 12. We want you to think about using it even as like that nucleo talking point when you're talking to your kindergarten colleagues about transitioning students. So just keep that in mind as we go along today. And here's why this is high level, because the plan itself, it weighs in at 194 pages. Now, if you're like, the Big Bang Theory geek like me, I love it. And I've read it so many times. As I've said, poor Kim, since 2024, I was like, you know what else? What I saw in the plan, this, then I'm sending another email. And you know what else, Kim? I read the plan again, and then I saw this. Then I'm calling Cindy, and then Cindy's calling Jenny. So 194 pages for the average non-nerdy, non-data person. That's kind of a lot. And so our goal is just to kind of very high level today, get you to start thinking about it if you haven't been already. And then we really want you to stop and ask us a question at any time. We're happy to, we'll be checking the chat and make sure that we stop for your questions. But we also want you to think about as we go through this and think about deeper diving in the preschool for all expansion world. What is needed? How can we help? Kimberly presented on this last April right after the PFAE conference. And one thing that she said then from some meetings she had already had with Cindy is, they already recognize that sometimes that language for early childhood, it can be a little bit different than our K-up colleagues, especially for our colleagues who are in that community-based space. And so Kim has already said, like, they're constantly looking, how can they partner with ECPL to maybe make some one-pagers or resources that are more specific to early childhood. And thank you for co-signing and shaking your head. Yes, I'm telling the truth. So Kim said that. So think of your questions and then also think of your, like, oh, you know what? This could be helpful for us, and put those in the chat. We will capture the chat and go over it before the conference in April. And then ECPL Cindy and Jenny will also be looking at it to see what might need to be created on the ECPL side. And you've already heard this, that this is a bird's eye view. So you are invited to the conference, which guess what? This year, you all, the conference is smack dab in the middle of Week of the Young Child. So it's just like this divine providence that just had this date be right there. So, our not my conference, the ECPL is the Illinois Division of Early Childhood Conference will be right in the middle of the Week of the Young Child. And so that's just a really special thing. And if we don't know who is the young child, well, NAEYC has done a wonderful job of telling us about that. If you know anybody in this category, that's celebrating the Week of the Young Child, which of course PFAE is right there in the middle, and that preschool age. But then again, always thinking about what are those transitions that we can put in place for our children and our families to have smooth transitions as they go from pre-K to kindergarten. You're going to hear us talk about a lot of information today. The resources are in QR codes, but we also have them in links, and we will make sure we finish in enough time when Cindy and Karen and Jenny come back on to do the housekeeping. We will drop those links in the chat for you as well so that you can have them in a multimodal form of either QR codes or links.
All right. Thank you for that great introduction, and we'll dive right in. The purpose of what I would like to discuss is really just to share the plan. I know some of you are familiar and maybe have put eyes on the plan already. Some of you have done maybe a deeper dive and got to look through those 194 pages that are packed full. But I want to make sure that everyone on the call kind of has a general understanding of what the Illinois Comprehensive Literacy Plan looks like and what information is contained in there and how to navigate the plan. Feel free as I'm going through, if you have questions, as Dr. Taylor mentioned earlier, if you want to drop them in the chat. I will definitely, make a point to try to keep eyes on the chat. Dr. Taylor will as well. And if I don't see it right away, we'll come back to it at some point during the presentation. All right, so I'd like to just give a quick overview, discuss how you can go about engaging with the plan, dependent upon your role and how familiar you are with the Illinois Comprehensive Literacy Plan, what that looks like, as we're thinking about that transition to kindergarten and the specifics within your district, or the context in which you're working. I'd like to share some existing information about the existing resources and support that are out there and where you can find them. And then again, if we have any questions, we'll make time for those. So just some background. The Illinois Comprehensive Literacy Plan really came to be in October 2022 was kind of our first step towards developing this. Prior to that, we had seen a lot of different legislation come across our desk regarding reading. And we've seen that across the nation, every state taking a different approach at literacy and early literacy, whether it's through mandatory screeners or through grade retention. And what's really unique about Illinois is the value that it's placed on local control and trying to see the context that exists within your own local environments. So we started with the ISB Literacy Summit in October of 2022 to really get feedback from the field in terms of what were their literacy needs and what did that look like across the state. That was then promptly followed up with the filing of the legislation that would later guide this work. And then we quickly began drafting the Illinois Comprehensive Literacy Plan. And we really take pride in the fact that we tried to start this process with the pen in the hands of the stakeholders and then continuously engage them throughout the process of the development of the plan. So we compiled a team of about 20 members to compose our writing. our first writing team, and they consisted of stakeholders from every perspective that we could think of. So we did have some early childhood representatives on there, along with Ed Prep. We had K-12 representatives all the way up to high school, really anyone who had a perspective about about literacy and how to develop that here in Illinois. We released the first draft and went on a listening tour to get feedback, and then went back to the plan to try to revise and incorporate that feedback. At the same time, our governor signed that bill into law that then now mandated the release of the Illinois Comprehensive Literacy Plan by January of 2024. So we released draft 2 and did the listening tour all over again. And then in January of 2024, we formally presented the Comprehensive Literacy Plan to the Illinois State Board of Education, and it was adopted at that meeting. And then we've been in the process of implementation, spreading awareness, and meeting the other requirements within the the Public Act 103-0402 since then. So a few things that I'd like to emphasize is that the plan is really about leveraging guidance and flexibility and supporting our local educators, and it's not a top-down approach. So all of the mandates that exist within that public act were actually on ISB. There are no mandates that exist for school districts in relationship to the Illinois Comprehensive Literacy Plan. We really tried to embrace this concept that the Illinois Comprehensive Literacy Plan would be guidance and not governance. We wanted to provide strategic support and not just mandate something that wasn't going to work for every context. And we were really hoping that through that lens and through that approach that we'd be able to help districts foster their innovation and responsiveness to their own local needs, which for a lot of our schools have changed drastically in the last few years with different student body demographics and the needs that they have. We also really tried to focus on enhancing literacy practices that were working and looking at using data to drive improvements. So really leveraging MTSS and other data-driven strategies to help develop and improve upon the literacy practices that are already working. And again, going back to that idea of local control, helping districts recognize what is working for them and what needs exist within their own local communities. So that's kind of the heart of the plan and the overall goal. And this is just our call to action and kind of our purpose within the plan. So again, it helps us center our belief that literacy is important, that it's not just the act of learning to read and write, but it really is a social justice issue. And it starts long before they come to us in school. So all of the work that we can do to help develop lifelong learners who have the skills to navigate this world and communicate effectively within it is so important for them to have success later on in life. And I think that's at the heart of any transition, whether we're talking about from early childhood into kindergarten, or if we're talking about from elementary and the transitions they make into middle and high school, or even then into their post-secondary tract. One thing that we've really tried to elevate and kept consistent even from the start of our writing plan was leveraging and really shining a spotlight on our guiding values. I wish I could have recorded little snippets of our discussions as we just tried to define what literacy was, because as you could imagine, you get a bunch of people who are very passionate about literacy and reading and writing and words, and we would have very opinionated discussions about what that means. But one thing that we settled on were these guiding values. So these actually came from our original drafting team. And it is, again, it's our call to action that we want to see the Illinois education system as a whole prioritize literacy. But that looks like what those values and beliefs are below. So it means that every learner has the right to high quality instruction. Every learner deserves to nurture their unique assets and interests, honoring the the gifts and the talents that they bring to the school environment. Every learner has the right to develop literacy in 2 or more languages that help prepare them to be citizens in a global world. They should be empowered through self-agency, and they should also have the right to reliable and valid assessments that give them feedback on where they're at in that journey. So these come straight from stakeholders, and we've really embodied what this is in regards to our view of literacy. So again, the plan is hefty. We recognize that. Now, I will say we have quite a few resources built into the plan, like workbook sections at the end of each. We have several pages of citations, but that doesn't take away from the fact that you're holding a pretty hefty document if you're trying to read it cover to cover. So just a quick overview. The plan is broken into really 5 sections. We start with the vision and purpose, which is just essentially what I've talked about in a series of just a few pages. We try to emphasize that call to action and why a literacy plan is important. We then dive into section 1, which is the bulk of the plan. This is looking at instruction and what literacy practices would look like within a classroom environment. And that's really scaffolded for multiple levels. We also then turn our attention to the educator professional learning so that all teachers are prepared to deliver high quality instruction in regards to literacy. We also look at leadership. That was one thing that we heard through feedback, is the need for our leaders to be supported in helping to create that literacy rich culture. Then we have a section that is really implemented at helping districts develop local literacy plans. And then we end with the tools and resources section. So I'm going to give just a quick overview of each of those sections. And then I know Dr. Taylor is going to do a little bit deeper dive into that section 1. So our first section is the bulk of the section. This is focusing on the goal that every student receives high quality evidence-based literacy instruction. We start with a primer about how literacy develops. And this was something that we debated about the value of adding it, but we heard through feedback with the field that understanding the theoretical framing for how we learn to read, it's not as natural of a process as some of us previously, believed or even were instructed. Giving some common language for teachers who are teaching literacy to share with maybe administrators who don't have the literacy training and background. So this is a dense portion of section 1, but I think it's a good place to start to understand where the rest of the plan leads into. We then look at our 7 components for literacy. If you're familiar with the National Reading Panel report from 2000, it is those same 5 pillars, but we've added oracy and writing to the end, and we do a deep dive into what those look like. We then connect these to the Illinois Learning Standards, and we discuss evidence-based instruction with each of those components, also through MTSS. So each component has about a 4-page spread. Within that spread, you'll see just an overview of the component where we define what each of these are. We talk about assessment and intervention considerations. We offer further reading suggestions. So if you'd like to dive deeper into what oracy might look like in the classroom, we offer some resources to explore. One thing that was heavily requested from the field was this ages and stages area. Within each component, we were really requested from a lot of classroom teachers to give them, like, what should my second graders be doing? Or what should my pre-K class be doing? What would literacy look like? Well, again, honoring local control and the context and the developmental spectrum, it's not as easy as saying this is where you should be in second grade. So instead, we did these ages and stages to give a general overview of where the trade-off and handoff and what different literacy practices all around the same components might look like, say, in young learners versus a high school student. We also provide considerations for multilingual learners, our advanced learners, our learners with specialized needs for each of the components. So we try to go as in-depth as we can to allow you to consider who are the students in your classroom and what needs do they have. So again, within that kind of last part where we're talking about those considerations for all learners, this is still in section 1. We discuss the need for high quality, diverse, culturally sustaining materials. We discuss concepts of print, 21st century skills, and how that is interconnected and weaves with some of our 20th century skills like handwriting, print and digital reading, content or disciplinary literacy are also discussed there as well. We do a deeper dive into multilingual learners, though this is an area that we recognize we need, just like with early childhood, more resources, and we're working with our multilingual department to release some. But if there are specific resources that you have in mind for our early childhood multilingual learners, feel free to drop that in the chat or send me an email. Always happy to brainstorm there as well. We talk about specialized education needs, dyslexia being, a hot topic that we know is discussed in a lot of other states' legislations. But we chose to do this again through guidance within our document, and we referred to resources that previously existed, like our dyslexia handbook that's put together by the SLD project out of Eastern. We also look at MTSS throughout this and how it connects to the literacy plan. Section 2 then switches to Goal 2, which is looking at how every educator should be prepared to support and should feel prepared to, and also supported, to deliver high quality evidence-based literacy instruction. And this is looking kind of at a two-prong approach. So we're looking not only at PD that we would provide in-service teachers, but we're looking at our relationship with Ed Prep and how things might be different for those of us who are seeking traditional teaching degrees or even alternative licenses, or what that might look for even our paras. And we've got some really exciting work going on right now with our educator effectiveness department around alignment with the Illinois Comprehensive Literacy Plan and the Ed Prep programs. So again, this is kind of a two-prong approach to this section. Section 3 looks at effective literacy leadership, and this is looking at our building and district leaders, but also our teacher leaders and those who have a leadership role instructionally, and what we can do to help support them to create that literacy-rich culture within the school district. Section 4 then moves into support and implementation. This is a workbook style. I think the theme of our literacy plan is really, again, helping educators reflect on the literacy environment that they are working in. And it's not a copy paste. One thing might work in a different district that might need some tweaking to be successful in your own. So this workbook style guidance is really a series of questions that would help prepare you to write a district literacy plan or revise a district literacy plan and have all of those considerations in place to make that a really strong alignment. So some of those questions that you would see within section 4, that kind of workbook style section, are guiding questions like, what are the strengths and weaknesses of our current literacy program? What patterns or trends do we notice in student performance data? Who are the key stakeholders in our literacy initiatives? And we're really trying to encourage you to think outside of the school environment. Do an asset mapping for your whole community. And I think that's a really strong connection for our early childhood providers, because oftentimes there's a wealth of resources that you bring to the table that help our school districts then implement really strong literacy programs. Our tools and resources is simply a section that lists all the free ISV sponsored resources that we can. This is divided by section. It really was to help us do an early, take an early approach to trying to connect to existing resources, because that's the beauty of what we do within the Illinois State Board of Education, though sometimes it can be really large and things get lost in the mix. But we have a lot of really high quality resources that exist out there and a lot of really great work that's being done. And so it's important for us within standards and instruction to highlight that work. So an example would be this conversation here with ECPL and even our early childhood department, and being able to spotlight the work that you do and how it connects to the work that I'm doing within standards and instruction. So we've tried to develop a resource guide to help you make those connections. I will admit that 2 years later, this probably needs updated and will be something that we look at. So if you've come across any really great documents that you think should be listed here that maybe are new, please feel free to drop me an email and let me know about those. Since the release of the plan in 2024, then in July of that year, we released a Getting Started toolkit and some additional resources. So this would include really anything to get you started with the plan, some at a very high level. So we have some overview resources, including an executive summary, a legislation fact sheet that explains that legislation that created this plan and the mandates that exist on ISB. We have some frequently asked questions. We also have an implementation checklist. Then if you are at a place where you're actually implementing a literacy program or revising a literacy vision within your existing program, we have some tools to help get you started with that, including an asset mapping template, also data literacy information sheet. We have reader's guides. These help you navigate the plan. Again, and we know it's a hefty lift if you were to read it cover to cover. And not every section is as relevant to each audience as it may be to another. So we have reader's guides broken up by your roles. So one even for our family and community or a student, but then different leaders within different contexts. We have some graphics, like posters, our 7 components of literacy posters that breaks down those different components and the high-level overview of those. We also provide our literacy standards for elementary endorsement as a poster too. Those were not changed when we adopted our literacy plan. Those have stayed consistent. And we think that they're really strong and great. So we wanted to highlight those on a graphic as well. We also have a literacy plan template, a literacy rubric that goes along with our curriculum evaluation tool. That's a great place to start as we think about transitioning to kindergarten, using that CET tool to spark some conversations with your kindergarten counterparts. We have some literacy coaching guidance, and then we also have some additional resources for our multilingual and newcomer students and our educators who are supporting those populations. These are just some really quick visuals. I know some of us, I listed off a number of resources that are available, but this is what each of those look like. Oh, sorry, my controls are being a little laggy. The data literacy information, this is also going to support if you work in a district that has existing screeners already. We know that next year we are doing a 1-year collection of what screeners are being used. So this helps you identify effective screening practices, and along with the data literacy and the screening guidance, what differences exist between screeners and benchmarks. Again, I think that's a great place to start when you're having conversations with your kindergarten counterparts. This is what our reader's guides, the different covers look like. And that's my very quick overview. So I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Taylor. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and I will respond as we're finishing our presentation.
So that was a lot, we're going to just press pause. And we know that technically, for a virtual event, there should not be, as they say, on radio, dead air. But we know in education, it's not dead air, it's what we call processing time. So just all that was shared as we transition to talk about and Kim and I, we've had a lot of conversations about this, but in particularly, I think when she and I met with her, with Kirsten, the director, we really talked about, it's okay to say like, what's in it for me, right? Because this is a lot that we're asked to do. And there's many other things that as administrators, you're doing on a daily basis. So we wanted to do this high level and then try to dive into the what's in it for me and the lens of preschool for all, early childhood education and care. But before we do that, we really do want to just press pause and let there be 30 seconds of silence. That's okay. If you have any wonderings, clarifying questions, uh-ohs, or aha moments, go ahead and put them in the chat. Okay, Amani, I'm glad your phone was able to let you back in. If you all think of anything as we're going through, again, please go ahead and put it in the chat. Now, I was being so good. Jenny and Cindy and Kim, this is not my fault. You all know I have no filter when I see anyone on that I know. I was being so good, but then, hey, Kim, how are you, hunty? Oh, it's so good to see you. Happy New Year, Miss Narisha. Yes, I think I saw Laura. I feel like the romper room late, and I saw Laurel and Teonia. Hi, all these people that we know. Always so good to see you, even if virtually, and hope that you all will be able to come to the conference. But yeah, that ages and stages is so important, Kim, because just that messaging. uh, So often, and I don't know, this is just by default in early childhood, or sometimes to the K upside, we see things and we immediately say, oh, well, that's not talking about me, right? So I'm just going to keep my attention over here. And then later on down the line, we realize, oh, maybe I should have been more involved in that conversation than I was. So, just that ages and stages really just keeps us all connected to know that this is really that wonderful work that we want to do. And it lets us, this is Laurel's language, it lets us be bilingual professionally. So we know early childhood language can look different from kindergarten language and vice versa. It's wonderful if we can speak each other's languages so that number one, it's good for our children and our families, but number two, it creates a more collegial atmosphere for us. So all of those things that you all were mentioning that you saw, wonderful. Now, what's in it for me? Like, but when this all said and done, I still have to meet these compliance checklists for my grant. So somebody's got to help me with that. You know that Jenny and Cindy, I didn't see Lynn Burgett on here. I think I saw you. Hey, Kathy Villano from the PSS side for Preschool for All expansion and the Preschool for All coaching side. They're constantly asking the coaches to remind the administrators and teams, yes, there is this compliance checklist. It's an accountability system, but beyond compliance is that good old-fashioned evidence-based practices, instructions. And so, you're going to hear me talk about the checklist a little bit, but we just want you to keep that lens on of like, oh, you know what this is? This is just good practice. And this is good practice that we need to be starting at with our earliest learners so that the seed that grows from that really supports kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and all the way up. So what's the best way to do that? You really have to talk about these components and thinking about how they align, knowing that I highlighted the students with a disability. And I will have to tell you, one of the first things, I don't know, Kim, if you remember this from really 2024 when we first met, the advanced learners. It was like, Jerry Maguire movie, you had me at advanced learners. So often we don't explicitly talk about our students who, when we think about the ages and stages, like they are four, but somewhere my grandmother used to call them an old soul. They're like four going on 14, right? So they many areas of their domains of development, they would appear advanced. What type of instruction do we differentiate for them? We often think of scaffolding as building a child up, but if you think of scaffolding, it goes all the way up. So it allows one to reach. That's what I think of. And so this plan, it covers this entire spectrum, really of what the Council for Exceptional Children constantly says. Specialized education is not just about a child that has a disability. We are remiss if we don't remember that specialized education services must be inclusive of advanced learners. And then, of course, sometimes we have those 2E children. They both meet the criteria of a disability diagnosis through IDEA or 504 and would meet what we would call the criteria under the talented and gifted criteria. So how do we comprehensively serve all of those children? And the comprehensive literacy plan allows us to do that. There it is right there. You see on your left side of your screen, the Illinois Early Learning and Development Language Arts Standards, which specifically speak to listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And you can almost, draw your lines across to, oh, well, the components of a literacy plan that says this, like there's an app for that already. We've got the learning, the standards to help us do that. Here's what that looks like across those components of literacy. And I would also say that just because we can point to those 4 points and directly link them to the Illinois Early Learning and Development Standards, for those of us that watch this, you all look. I didn't even have to get up from my work desk. Boop, here's the standards right here, right? So for those of us that teach with the standards, consult with the standards, meet with legislators, have our little standards right there, you've looked at those benchmarks, you've looked at those descriptors, and you can see, oh yeah, well, word recognition, it fits here within the Illinois Early Learning and Development Standards, fluency, comprehension, and you've also would be able to say, oh, but guess what? This goes across those domains of development within the Illinois Early Learning and Development Standards. Yes, it's housed within language and literacy, but why is there an upcoming numeracy plan? Oops, I just told you all a little secret that we're going to talk about at the end. But why would we need a numeracy plan? Yeah, because when we're talking about language and literacy, ever heard of a word problem? You've got to have language and literacy within numeracy, within science, within the arts. It's really like our founding place where it starts. So these, what you see, are the 4 specific places, but we could cross-directional that across all of these components. Okay. You saw the explicit statement around multilingual learners. Excuse me. Where's our starting point? The comprehensive literacy plan, multilingual learners start with the home language survey. I would say, especially for us, when children are entering in and we know we're doing that screening, we must also do the home language survey. Even if we think, well, all of the children that are coming into our program or all the children that live in our district speak this language. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. The best way not to have to guess is to do the home language survey. From there, we develop all of our teaching and learning strategies that we're going to do. how we're going to implement that when we're talking about MTSS, we're at our universal foundational level, and how we would build out for that in every area: teaching, observation, assessment. The seed that we need to plant and that we want to do professional learning around is that home language survey. And then what's next after the home language survey? Should we find a child meets the criteria of being a multilingual learner? You heard Kim talk about it a lot. Professional development, professional development. If we are asking educators to do something, if we are asking administrators to do something, the first thing we need to do is put the support system in place for them to be able to do that. And that's all professional learning. So again, with the multilingual learners, if you haven't really done this in your programs, if you've done it, but like, you know what, maybe we need to review home language surveys, and we're going to show you a link, for some more resources around multilingual learners that is coming up. But that would be our starting point there that we would recommend. Then, when it comes to specialized services, now, yes, the specialized services explicitly talked about dyslexia and advanced learners. Right here, we're going to talk about the individualized education program because it is our literal blueprint to the accommodations, modifications, differentiated needs that students have. And if we read that and we do a table read around it and we make sure that every person, the teachers, the classroom assistants, related services personnel understand the needs of those children with an IEP, then it takes the comprehensive literacy plan and makes it that much more easier to implement for a student that may have a disability. And advanced learners. Like how would we know if we have advanced learners that are 3, 4, and 5? What is our universal screener that we're using? It's the wonderful snapshot that we get when children are coming to us, wherever they're coming from. Maybe they've been in Head Start. They may have been in a home facility where they receive their education in home structure. They could have been coming in, maybe they have not had structured education and they have been in the cares many cultures do with, members that are in the home or a family member that is caring for the child at a certain age. When they are entering our systems, that screener is so important. Now, the State Board of Education does not endorse any particular screener, but I am going to ask you to, in the chat, do this. Share with us what universal screener you are currently using, because although the state board and I believe the new agency will not either endorse a particular screener, they definitely do approve screeners that are evidence-based, and per our state superintendent, if it is a tool like a screener or an assessment used in Illinois, it must line up with our standards. So for us, that would be the Illinois Early Learning Guidelines and the Illinois Early Learning and Development Standards. So in the chat, we want you to share what universal screener you are currently using. And then just thinking about the information that Kim and I have discussed thus far. How do you use screening results? How could you use screening results to support early childhood education and care, comprehensive literacy? Okay, a lot of us are using Dial, and I'm also seeing that a lot are using, and we saw this a lot happen during the pandemic. A lot of programs kind of complemented one screener with another. We saw a lot move towards that ASQSE, and we saw that they were using like the ASQSE and the Dial 4. So we're seeing Dial, ASQ, and Dial 4. Hey there again, Tiona. Brigands, they Dial 4 ASQ3 ESR Plus, Early Screening Inventory, the revised one. ages and stages 3, ages and stages SE. So wonderful that we have these screeners in place. Now, if you just think about the information that you get from those screeners, how might we use that to begin the data informing, and all data doesn't have to be quantitative. A lot of data is qualitative. That's the voice of the parent, the voice of the educator, even understanding the voice of the child. How might we use those screening results to begin our planning in our classroom for comprehensive literacy? Thanks, Erica. What is the higher starting point for literacy practices with those students who may be more advanced? Absolutely. How are we going to differentiate up for those families? Thanks for sharing that, Erica. When we get our screeners, it also will let us know often where children are on their receptive language versus their expressive language. And oftentimes, when I'm thinking about the comprehensive literacy plan, and Kim and I were talking a lot around oracy, how do we handle the difference of expressive language and receptive language when it comes to our youngest learners? What do we do? How do we create within our system teaching and learning opportunities for children who could be way up here on receptive language, right? And then when it comes to expressive language, being able to process what they have heard or even process what they want to say and actually get it out of their mouths, it can be a little bit different. Absolutely, Kim. And this is major family engagement. The family interview is going to let us know really how the family sees the child, how they engage with their child. What can we learn from the family? Because they are, in fact, our partners in this work. When we talk about who's all seated at the table as stakeholders, without the family, and the pandemic taught us that very quickly, and well, really across education as a whole, but in early childhood, we learned when we didn't have those families with us, we were like searching where our children are. So that family interview, and speaking of that, Kim Nelson was sharing that we should be thinking about components of this literacy plan that we could share with families in a family-friendly way, right? As to what we're thinking about, what we're doing in our classrooms, what we're doing in our programs. And we do have a QR code in here that one of the posters Kim was talking about. I just love it so much because you can pull it right up on your phone and have a family member do that during, parent teacher conference night, and they can just pull it right up on their phone, and it will make for great homeschool connections, as we say. Thank you all for sharing. If you get any more ideas, go ahead and put them in the chat. You heard Kim say it. You all are, if you know me, like MTSS, if you just say that to me, like I can get a whole 24 can of Pepsi because I can just talk about MTSS for so long because like that's my diamond in the rough for me. The comprehensive literacy plan does ground itself in multi-tiered system of support. And so we're not going to do a whole lot on MTSS here, other than to say it's within the plan, but we wanted to share this with you. Why is it in the plan? Because in our country, the law of the land is the Every Student Succeeds Act. And the Every Student Succeeds Act talks about evidence-based practices grounded and deeply rooted in MTSS. And what that allowed us to do is look at evidence-based practices and when you read through those plans, like the next time you go get your pedicure, or you're at the beauty shop, as my grandma used to say, and you know what? I need some easy reading. I'm just going to read through the literacy plan. You will see this language adopted right in the plan. So it literally lifts from ESSA, and ESSA did what No Child Left Behind. Let me just say it like this. What we learned from No Child Left Behind is explicitly defining language is so important. And so in the Every Student Succeeds Act, it says evidence-based practices, must be used by state education agencies and local education agencies, but then it defined it. And so you will see this EBP language, as we like to call it, defined actually explicitly in the Illinois Comprehensive Literacy Plan. And this is what I love about it being in the plan. It helps us with that tug of war of response to intervention, which is very deficit based. What is the response when children struggle? We got to intervene, and then we need to monitor how they respond when we intervene. It was all about when children struggle, what do we do? Whereas MTSS is very asset based in mind. It's about what do we do foundationally across all domains of development, across every child, with every family, using our standards, using, our curriculum tools, everything that we build into the framework of our foundation at a universal foundational level. And then we take all of those evidence-based practices, of which there are many. If you're in Illinois, you already know about the pyramid, National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations. Our state also has a trauma law, and there is trauma practices we have to do. There's a resiliency toolkit. There are so many different things that require that we need to synthesize our evidence-based practices. And what MTSS does is it takes those evidence-based tiered practices and creates one doable, sustainable system for teachers and administrators to be able to implement. Now, what does that look like in Illinois? I'm so glad you asked, because MTSS is within the grant deliverables for ECPL. And so on their page, on this QR code, you will see on their page for MTSS, try to put in as many resources that allow you to, well, what is the focus that I need for multilingual learners? It's right on that page. What about students with disabilities? You're going to find the early choices resources there. What about social emotional development, learning, and competency? You're going to find those resources right there. So I want to invite you all right now to pull up that QR code. I'm also going to stop sharing for just a second to put the link in the chat so that you can grab it that way if you'd prefer. And again, we're going to do 30 seconds of silence for you to look at that page. And the beauty about this is that when ECPL built this page out, earlier on, one of our colleagues was saying, oh, wow, I would love some resources for English language learners. You'll find it right on this page. And I will also tell you, well, there goes the 30 seconds of silence. Let me go back to 30 seconds of silence, and then I'll talk some more. Tick-a-lock. Okay, one of our colleagues was saying, I would love some ELL resources. This is what you're finding on that page right now. The very top of that page really talks about just briefly defines it. MTSS in and of itself is really probably like a whole full day conference just to talk about what it is and then begin building, what your MTSS framework will look like. And as Kimberly said, it's based off of the data of the constituency. So Each district, the framework will look different because districts are looking at what their data is telling them about their student needs, their family needs, and even as we think about our Danielson framework, our teacher evaluation needs, what does that data tell us our staff needs? And so the framework will look different for everyone, even though we would define it the same. So that page that you see, the very first part of it just briefly defines MTSS, and then it helps us talk about the problem statement is that you cannot effectively and sustainably implement multiple tiered supports well. Sooner or later, a plate's going to spin off the stick and you're going to drop a plate. But if you systemize and integrate those tiered evidence-based practices, then that solves the problem. On that page, you'll also see upcoming professional learning opportunities. And then again, you see, and I'm just telling you, the State Board of Education just recently reached the Educational Rights and Responsibilities, Understanding Special Education in Illinois. And the chapter 2 of this guidance is specific to MTSS and the referral and evaluation process. And I'm not just saying this because Kim is on here and I want her to just keep letting me be her friend on Facebook or anything like that. But it is a wonderfully written document that just goes chapter by chapter, answering all the questions that families may have so that we can work in collaboration with our families, on all processes, including MTSS. So that's what's on this page. Students with disabilities will take you straight to early choices. Students who are multilingual learners. Now, earlier you heard me mention well, you need to do the home language survey. There are some beautiful video snippets on that students who are multilingual learners page that takes you right into what the look, the sound, the feel of the home language survey. And it is in English, it is in Spanish. Tammy King, I thought I saw you on here. What is the other language? Please help me, Tammy, and put it in the chat or come off mute and share real quick. I think I saw Tammy on here.
I'm here. Arabic is the other one.
Thank you. And Arabic, and just beautifully done. You can use them as conversation starters with your families. I would say use them with your staff. Right there, we know. And again, how can we do that? Oh, you know what? Today I learned that the Illinois Comprehensive Literacy Plan is explicit around students who are multilingual learners. Let's have a conversation about that in our PFA or PFAE program. And by the way, here's how we're going to do it. There's a tool already built. And if you're looking at that, you already see. So all of this is right there for you. We put the link in the chat. You've got the QR code, and we just encourage you to come back to this over and over and over again to get the information that you need as you infuse the Illinois Comprehensive Literacy Plan into the work that you're doing. Now, for a deeper dive around MTSS, ECPL partners with the Illinois Principal Association to do academies. There is one coming up that's specific to early MTSS and early childhood, early learning environments. If you are an administrator and you want Administrator Academy, there's a pre-activity and a post-activity you have to do in order to get the 6 full credits. If you are just saying, hey, you know what, I'd love this information for a deeper dive, you can still participate with this academy, but instead of getting a administrator credit, you would just get like CEU credit, but you still get all the resources. So that's pretty nice, like buy one, get one free sort of thing. So go ahead and download that. I will put the link for that in the chat a little bit later. All right, everybody good before we go on? And I'm watching our time. Kim, we're doing pretty good here. Everybody okay before we go on? I'm checking the chat. Thank you, my Tammy. The direct link to the videos is there. See, don't come on anything from ECPL and say you need any resources because now we just gave you some more stuff to read in addition to the comprehensive literacy plan. And again, as you all are looking at this, in the chat, feel free to say, this is great. As I think about the Comprehensive Literacy Plan, this would be nice too, because that is information that Jenny and Cindy and Kim can use to help us create, even for April, but just even further down the line as this plan is going to unfold even more and more and more. Okay, now, da, 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 da. Eckers 3. Now, if you're anybody on here and you just went through monitoring, I do not mean to give you PTSD or anything like that. Go ahead and get a sip of your coffee or tea or your Pepsi, whatever it is, because I'm about to talk about Eckers 3. But here's where we want to talk about. Thank you, Miss Brandy. Oh, hey, girl. Hey, Miss Brandy. I don't think I said hi to you earlier. Oh, back to our, regularly scheduled program. But hey, Miss Brandy, thank you for putting that in there. We know that for our teachers, Eckers 3 is important because it is the universal monitoring system that is used, and accountability is never a bad thing. It's never a bad thing. It only gets that stigma when all we think about is checklist, checklist, check. Did we check it off the list? Okay, now we leave us alone, right? And Cindy and Jenny and Kathy Filano and Lynn Burgett have been saying over and over and over again. But really, Eckers 3 is a tool. It's a guide. You all, look at this. Look. Didn't even have to get, when I'm consulting, when I'm creating, when I'm meeting with legislators, I don't even have to get out my chair to get my, look at Eckers 3. Why? Because beyond compliance, there are the evidence-based practices that are talked about in the Illinois Comprehensive Literacy Plan are right there in Eckers 3, right here. These are the indicators within Eckers 3, helping children to do what? Expand vocabulary, encourage children to use language, staff engaging children in book activities. All of these things are right within Eckers 3. So now, as we think back to yeah, but they're also in the IELDS. And they're within Eckers 3, and it's within the literacy plan. Do you see how we can triangulate these evidence-based tools to implement evidence-based instruction that elevates the teaching and learning experience, not only for our children, but for our families as well, and make it sustainable so that this is the administrator's forum, right? You can go back and share with your teachers. This is the opposite of adding something else to your plate. This is helping us manage what's already on the plate because it's what we're doing anyway. And it gets us out of that, oh, Eckers 3 is all about the people are going to come and they're going to be monitoring us, to, oh, we can get some good information because right, under that Eckers 3, when it gives the indicator, it also explains the indicator, right? With the IELDS, not only does it give us the goal, the standard, and the benchmark, it then goes across this beautiful horizontal of performance descriptors. So where does a child look like when if they have a disability? Where might they look on those performance descriptors if they are advanced in their ability? And then it lets us know how we might want to target our teaching. So all of these things that we have, and the literacy plan, again, just gives us this guidance of how to make it more comprehensive. So lucky you all, we do have time for the scavenger hunt, so we're going to do it, right? We're going to look at the literacy plan, just what we've talked about thus far, the Illinois Early Learning and Development Standards, and Eckers 3. But for right now, we want you all to focus on oracy. It's one of the 7 components of the literacy plan. And you're going to think about, and I'm IELDS, Eckers 3, the literacy plan. And we just want you to do a little scavenger hunt and find something from Eckers 3. Think of something from Eckers 3. Go to your Illinois Early Learning and Development Standards, language and literacy, find a benchmark, and then what we want you to do is in the chat, just briefly share oh, This is what I found in IELDS that lines up with the oracy component of the literacy plan. And by the way, it's right there in ECHRS 3. Here are those language and literacy items again. And you can scan that QR code and it will take you directly to the Illinois Early Learning and Development Standards. I'm going to give you all a couple of minutes to scan the QR code, and then I'm going to stop sharing again, and I'm going to put the link to the IELDS in the chat. And you see Kim just gave you a hint. In the literacy plan, oracy is found on pages 34 and 37. And yeah, Laura, I love that. Helping the staff connect the dot, that is what this administrator's forum is all about. So you have the QR code in the chat. I'm about to put the link to the literacy plan. For the ECHRS 3, the McCormick, and they do the monitoring for that. They have like this tip sheet. I'm going to put the link to that in the chat, as well as the IELDS, so that you can do your scavenger hunt. Okay, there it is, everyone. Let's give you 3 minutes to do your scavenger hunt. So, oh, thanks, Karen. This is just, I'm kind of watching Kim's face. Are you reading I was going to say feed, that's on social media. The chat is, are you looking at this, Kim? I'm just looking at Kim's like face lighting up there. Do you, I'm almost speechless. Kim, I'm just gonna let you talk.
No, it's great to see, the connections and just being made in real time. And I think this is, just speaks to additional work that we can do to help make those connections clearer. But I think the value in kind of doing a deep dive also with those, in your program is really valuable. Like someone said earlier, connecting the dots and engaging in that practice is so valuable to transforming the instruction that we're providing.
And I think the goal of when we do this session at the conference is almost like to take this and really expand it into the world of multilingual learners. And what if you're having this conversation with a kindergarten, administrator or teacher? So this is just really been spot on. I'm really excited by this. So thank you all so much for just jumping right in there with us. And as we move on, if you have any more thoughts, keep them coming in. Keep putting them in the chat because we are going to capture this. And now, everybody, just be excited because if there is a comprehensive literacy plan, can the numeracy plan be far behind? And the answer to that question is no, it cannot. So in the works right now, I would just say, Kirsten, when Kirsten and Kimberly met with myself and Cindy for the planning of this, Kirsten literally was like, this show is going to go straight with Kimberly because we're out here by the direct expressed, desire of Superintendent Sanders building up this numeracy plan, right? So if you're interested, and we hope that you are, it's kind of following the same pattern as the comprehensive literacy plan. And Kim, I can just let you talk about this piece a little bit more, I think.
Yeah. I have been asked to wear my math hat more in the last 6 months than ever before, but it's been really exciting. So we are launching the numeracy plan. The difference between the numeracy plan and the literacy plan, we do not have legislation guiding this like we did with the literacy plan. So we're trying to get ahead of that a little bit, and really modeling it off of the literacy plan. However, we like to lovingly say they're sisters, not twins. So we recognize that the needs for Illinois Comprehensive Literacy Plan may be similar and present themselves in similar ways, but the challenges that we see, particularly with the Illinois Comprehensive Numeracy Plan, really goes much in a different way. Like there's a whole ball of yarn that we have to try to unravel to get at, what are our obstacles and challenges that we're facing at different levels, whether it's professional development, the standards and the breadth of the standards, all of that. So we've been hard at work to release the first draft that is available on our website. We will be very soon launching the second draft once we present that to the board next month. It will be immediately then available on our website. You will see a complete change from the first draft that is very kind of low tech to now the second draft has graphics and all the bells and whistles, and you'll see it. I'm actually quite jealous and want to have them redesign the literacy plan because it's a beautiful document. So really, we would love the perspective from early childhood. Whether you consider yourself a math person or not, that's a big thread throughout the numeracy plan, is that math identity and how we can foster that in all of our students. So we are seeking feedback. Again, you can read that first draft. The second draft will be available very, very soon. We will be engaging in a listening tour round 2. So we have locations throughout the state where you will get to meet my counterpart, Maggie, who is the math consultant, as well as Kirsten Parr and our project lead, Amy. And really, one thing that I am very proud of the work that we do is this is not something that we're writing in a vacuum. We are asking for feedback, and we do incorporate that feedback as best we can so that the plan can match the needs of our state. So the best thing to do is either provide feedback through the written form or attend one of our listening sessions and provide your feedback there. They're actually kind of fun. I know Dr. Taylor has been to some. It's fun to get in a room with other people and share your thoughts, and just share your needs too. How can we best support you? So really excited for this. Excited to have another component to be able to share. And we do have some exciting things in the works for this summer and in the coming year that bring both the numeracy plan and literacy plan together for some professional development.
Thank you, Kim. And, when I went to the numeracy plan, I was immediately the next day emailing Cindy like, okay, I can see where this is going. And again, in Cindy's thoughts is like, okay, so we're putting on those two hats, like in talking with Jenny of really helping the literacy plan move forward from that early childhood perspective, and then preparing for the numeracy one. And I will say that over the summer in July, there was a day-long comprehensive literacy plan conference that had 2 days of planning before. It was so good. It was just really good. And it's so nice to just, you see the folks that are at that K-up and higher ed folks, all of us sitting there learning and talking, seeking and sharing wisdom from each other was really good. So just keep on these pages. And then Kim, as those dates come out for the summer, let us know. I certainly will be there, because again, sharing feedback with Cindy, but I see you came off mute, so I'm going to just press pause.
Yeah, we are doing a repeat this year for those dates. I think we're going to focus more on bringing a team together instead of that day conference. But June 14th through 18th, we're also partnering with ISU. So you can mark those. We're also planning a summit to launch the following week, then probably sometime or somewhere in Springfield, to do some standards K-12 standards review for ELA. So we're not changing things. We're just looking at the standards to make sure that they're in alignment the way that we want them to be, and then also launching the literacy plan. So some exciting things there. I did want to address the question that popped up in the chat from Annie regarding the K-12 language. So we say that because of the change we are now with the new state agency, the early childhood state agency, and it not being under one house with ISB, we have our lanes that we're trying to stay in. So the plan that ISB is releasing is technically a K-12 plan. However, we do speak to language regarding early childhood as well, and we are trying to coordinate and connect with the new agency as much as possible. But we are limited in being able to have that same type of language just because of the new agency and the separation that exists. However, again, that early childhood perspective, I don't think we can have a K-12 plan without talking about the birth to 5 spectrum as well. And that is represented throughout the plan in a number of places. So would love your feedback. It's very relevant and important to share, regardless of the terminology that we're kind of limited to just due to the agency.
And the first listening, if you've looked at that QR code, the first one is virtual. And what I've found from being a part of these is that they do build off of each other. So that first one is virtual, but then as they continue to go more and more and more, they're constantly listening for threads. Like, do we see a thread here from session to session to session, and what that would build off of? So if you're on here now, you really want to make sure your kindergarten colleagues know about these, and maybe, do a virtual one together, sitting it together and think and share what can be added. And the physical ones are spread out throughout the state as well. They are after school, which gives, folks time to really be able to engage aside from work. So really hoping that we will engage in that. And if for nothing else, to just really think about the planning on the ECPL side between Cindy and Jenny and Kim and Kirsten as they, begin to look more at this. Would you just, Kimberly, give one more time that the June date that you mentioned, or put it in the chat so folks can
Yeah.
capture it?
I
Thank
can put
you.
it in the chat. It's June 14th through 18th. This one we're partnering with ISU for kind of a deep dive into the literacy plan and how to align that. I think that would be a great opportunity to come if you are connected within a district and want to explore kind of that transition plan. This would be great to attend.
And I mean, parking was easy. Like, I was just like right in the thick of it over the summer, and again, it was really good. So I know it's summer, like, oh gosh, but it was worth it. It was really worth it for the networking alone, and just seeing how things were playing out was really nice. So just kind of keep that, save the date, think about that in the meantime. And we're closing out, y'all. So here we go. Again, our contact information. Can't wait to see you during the week of the young child at the conference and the session. The activity, this is like one of the best activities that I've ever done. And so Kim, just in the thinking about this, I'm really excited to get to the hands-on activity that will take place. And then all of the sessions are just going to be so wonderful. If you've ever been there before, you already know that. And then celebrating the week of the young child, come on. Most of the resources we've already put in the chat. As we close out, give it back over to Jenny and Cindy and Karen. I'm putting that executive summary, that link right there in the chat that Kim mentioned before. Thanks for your time, everyone. Stay warm. It's going to be a cold one this weekend.